Welcome to JT Scary Tales. Her stepdad had bad intentions. 3 true horror stories animated. Story 1. Her stepdad had bad intentions. I remember the night my mom introduced John to me. She was glowing, her smile wide as she linked her arm through his. We met at work, she said, her voice bubbly, eyes full of admiration. John seemed harmless enough. A tall man with dark hair, a neatly trimmed beard, and a confident smile. Nice to meet you, Tara, he said, extending his hand. I shook it reluctantly, his grip lingering just a second too long. I wanted my mom to be happy. Ever since Dad passed away, she had been lonely, and I knew she deserved love again. But John, something about him felt off. No one could replace my dad, and John's constant attempts to win me over only made me resent him more. At first, he tried too hard, buying me little gifts, cracking jokes, acting like he was my best friend. My cousin Liam, who lived with us, was more accepting of him. Give him a chance, Liam told me, but I couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at me whenever John was around. Then, one evening at dinner, Mom and John sat us down. We have exciting news, Mom beamed, squeezing his hand. John and I are getting married. Liam cheered. Mom's eyes sparkled with joy. I forced a smile. If she was happy, I had to make peace with it, even if my gut told me something was wrong. One night, I was in the kitchen making a late-night snack when I felt something. A presence. I turned around and there was John, standing in the doorway, watching me. I hadn't heard him come in. My breath hitched. Whoa, John, you scared me. He didn't react. He just stepped forward slightly, his voice low. You should be more careful. Someone could sneak up on you. I let out a nervous laugh. Yeah, I guess. He didn't laugh back. He just stared, blank and unreadable, before turning and walking away. A chill crawled up my spine. A few days later, I accidentally spilled juice on the living room carpet. John was watching TV, and in an instant, his face turned red. Do you have any idea how expensive this carpet is? He snapped, his eyes bloodshot with rage. I'm sorry, I stammered, scrambling to clean it up. Sorry isn't good enough. He loomed over me, his breath hot and sour. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me hard. You need to do better. Do you understand me? Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded quickly. Then, just as fast as his anger erupted, it faded. He released me, straightened his shirt, and turned back to the TV, like nothing had happened. That night, I heard my mom and John arguing. John, please, calm down, Mom pleaded, her voice shaky. Don't tell me to calm down, he roared. I peeked into the living room. John was towering over her, his fists clenched. Mom looked so small, so scared. A bruise bloomed on her arm. A thin trickle of blood ran from her chin. Enough was enough. The next day, while John was out, I decided to dig into his past. I searched through his closet and found an old shoebox hidden beneath a pile of clothes. Inside were fake IDs, credit cards with different names, and stacks of cash. My hands trembled. John wasn't who he said he was. He was lying, to my mom, to all of us. I had to tell Mom, but I wanted to wait until Liam was home. I needed someone by my side. After school, as I was unlocking my bike in the parking lot, a familiar voice spoke behind me. Did you go through my things, sweetheart? Cold sweat trickled down my spine. I turned around slowly. John stood there, leaning against a car, a dark, twisted smile on his face. Tara, he murmured, his tone eerily calm. We need to talk. I don't want to talk to you, I said, stepping back. He took a step closer. Then, from his jacket, he pulled out a knife. You should have minded your own business, little birdie. My breath caught. The parking lot was nearly empty. My pulse pounded in my ears. I screamed for help, but my voice echoed into the void. No one heard me. I turned to run, but John lunged, grabbing my arm in a vice grip. I struggled, kicking wildly, but he was stronger. He dragged me toward his car, slammed me onto the hood, and raised the knife. The blade plunged into my shoulder. Agony exploded through me, the sensation of my flesh tearing. Warm blood seeping down my arm. I will never forget it. John was going to kill me. He'd make my death look like an accident. Adrenaline surged through my body. I fought, twisting my arm, and the knife clattered to the ground. I dove for it. Let go, he bellowed, trying to pull me back. But I was faster. I swung the knife toward him, my hand trembling. He lunged again, and I reacted on instinct. I stabbed him, right in the chest. John stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. He collapsed onto the pavement, blood pooling beneath him. I stood there, gasping for air, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the knife. A teacher ran over, shouting for help. Sirens wailed in the distance. The world blurred around me. They called it self-defense. John had been living under a stolen identity for years. He had a record: fraud, domestic abuse, assault. He had done this before. My mom had been another victim in a long line of women he preyed on. She was devastated, but she understood. She held me tightly in the hospital, tears streaming down her face. You saved us, Tara. I survived, but the fear never truly goes away. Even now, when I close my eyes, I see his face, the moment he lunged, the glint of the knife, the feeling of his weight as he tried to overpower me. I know I did what I had to do, but I'll never forget what it felt like to fight for my life and win. Story 2. Showgirl Stalker Attack. The lights of the Las Vegas Strip shimmered in the distance as Olivia Parker stepped out of the cab, her sequined dress catching the neon glow. She had always loved this city, the energy, the glamour, the way the stage lights made her feel invincible. But lately, something had changed. It started with the messages. At first, they were harmless, anonymous fan letters left in her dressing room, praising her performances. Then came the social media comments, always from an account with no profile picture. You're the most beautiful woman in the world. Olivia had brushed them off. Showgirls had admirers, it came with the job. But then the messages turned darker. I see you. You belong to me. One night after a late show, she found a single red rose taped to her car door. The next night, the same rose appeared in her apartment hallway, placed carefully outside her door. Her skin prickled with unease. She told herself it was just a persistent fan, nothing to be afraid of. But then she saw him. It was during a rehearsal. Olivia caught movement in the empty auditorium, a shadow lingering in the back row. She squinted through the stage lights, but whoever it was disappeared before she could get a good look. Security swept the theater, finding nothing. Probably just some creep who snuck in. Her friend and co-dancer, Lisa, said, "You should tell management." Olivia agreed, but deep down, she felt something worse was happening. That night, she triple-checked the locks before going to bed. Then, the dreams started. A faceless man standing over her as she slept. The feeling of cold fingers brushing against her cheek. The whispers in the dark. "You're mine, Olivia." She woke up drenched in sweat, heart hammering. But the worst part? When she turned on the bedside lamp, she found another rose on her nightstand. Her blood ran cold. She lived alone. The next day, Olivia went straight to the police. They took her seriously, but without solid proof. There wasn't much they could do. They suggested she stay with a friend, but Olivia refused. She wouldn't let fear control her. That was a mistake. A week later, after a particularly exhausting performance, Olivia drove home through the near-empty streets. She pulled into the parking garage beneath her building, her heels clicking against the concrete as she walked to the elevator. As the doors slid open, she stepped inside and froze. A man stood in the far corner, half hidden in shadow. He was tall, with a gaunt face and hollow eyes that gleamed in the dim light. Olivia's breath hitched as he smiled. "I knew you'd come home soon," he murmured. Panic surged through her. She fumbled for the open button, but the doors had already shut. The elevator began to ascend. "What do you want?" Her voice was steadier than she felt. The man tilted his head. "I've waited so long for this moment." Her fingers inched toward the emergency button, but he was faster. He lunged, pressing her against the cold metal wall, his breath hot against her ear. "You're even more beautiful up close," he whispered. Olivia acted on pure instinct. She drove her knee into his stomach and shoved him away. He grunted, staggering back just as the elevator dinged on her floor. She bolted out, sprinting down the hallway, fumbling for her keys. Behind her, heavy footsteps pounded closer. She reached her door, hands shaking. She jammed the key into the lock. Too slow. A hand clamped onto her shoulder. She screamed as he yanked her backward, her head slamming into the doorframe. Dazed, she kicked wildly, but he was strong. He dragged her toward the stairwell, muttering under his breath, "No more hiding, no more running, you're mine." Then, a deafening crack. The man stiffened. A dark bloom spread across his chest. He let go of Olivia, stumbling before collapsing onto the floor. Behind him, Lisa stood, a gun trembling in her hands. "Lisa," Olivia gasped, pressing a hand to her throbbing head. Her friend's face was pale. "I was coming to check on you. I saw him follow you inside." The police arrived minutes later. The man was identified as Daniel Brooks, a former casino worker who had been stalking Olivia for months. His apartment was filled with photos of her, stolen personal items, even a detailed journal documenting her every move. It wasn't just obsession, it was an elaborate plan. Olivia never set foot in that apartment again. She moved to a new place, somewhere safer, but the fear lingered. Every time she stepped on stage, she scanned the audience. Every time she walked alone, she glanced over her shoulder. The city lights still sparkled, but the shadows felt deeper now. Because she knew, without a doubt, not all admirers are harmless. Some just won't take no for an answer. Story 3. Delphi Murders. The town of Delphi, Indiana, was small, quiet, the kind of place where people didn't lock their doors at night. That all changed on February 13, 2017. Abigail Williams and Liberty German, best friends since elementary school, had the day off from school. It was unseasonably warm for February, so they decided to go for a hike near the Monon High Bridge, a well-known local landmark. Libby's older sister dropped them off around 1:30 p.m., reminding them to be safe. The girls promised they'd be back soon. They never returned. By evening, when the girls didn't show up at the designated pickup spot, their families grew worried. Calls to their phones went unanswered. A search party was formed, and volunteers combed the trails and surrounding woods with flashlights, calling out their names. The next afternoon, their bodies were found near a secluded area off the trail. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town. These things didn't happen in Delphi. Children didn't vanish. And yet, here they were. 2 young lives brutally cut short. The investigation began immediately. Law enforcement scoured the scene for evidence, but the details were scarce. The cause of death was never publicly revealed. But one chilling piece of evidence changed everything. Libby had recorded their killer. On her phone, investigators found a short video clip. The grainy footage showed a man walking towards them on the bridge. He wore a dark jacket and blue jeans, his hands stuffed in his pockets. His face was obscured by a shadow, but his voice was clear. "Guys, down the hill." 2 simple words, a calm command. It sent shivers through anyone who heard it. The police released the audio to the public, hoping someone would recognize the voice. They also released 2 sketches of the suspect, one of a clean-shaven man, the other with facial hair. The images circulated across news stations and social media. Tips flooded in by the thousands, but none led to an arrest. As the years passed, theories spread like wildfire. Some believed the killer was a local, someone who knew the area well enough to escape unnoticed. Others thought he was a drifter, someone passing through town who chose his victims at random. There were suspects, people questioned, homes searched, but no charges stuck. The case seemed to grow colder by the day, leaving Delphi haunted by the question, who killed Abby and Libby? Then, in 2022, an arrest. Richard Allen, a Delphi resident who worked at a local CVS, was taken into custody. His connection to the case had gone unnoticed for years. He lived just miles from the crime scene. He had even spoken to investigators early on, claiming he was near the bridge that day but saw nothing suspicious. Yet, as the case unraveled, disturbing details emerged. Allen's home contained potential evidence tying him to the crime. In a chilling admission, he later confessed to being on the bridge that day, though he denied harming the girls. His trial is set to determine the truth. But for the families of Abby and Libby, no verdict will bring them back. Today, the bridge stands as both a memorial and a warning. The woods are quieter now, as if holding their breath. The town still mourns, and parents hold their children closer, because the horror of that day remains, a reminder that even in the safest places, darkness can lurk just around the corner. And sometimes, it walks right up to you and says, "Down the hill." Do you love spine-chilling stories and eerie mysteries? You've come to the right place. At JT Scary Tales, we bring you the most terrifying and thrilling scary tales from around the world. From haunted places to unexplained phenomena, our scary tales will keep you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe now and dive into the dark world of scary tales.